So in this video, I'm going to be speaking about all the things I wish we knew before traveling to Egypt, which would have saved us so much time, hassle, as well as money. And if you are new here, make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss any of my travel videos. Also, to avoid any sort of jail time, make sure you stick around to the last tip. So leaving Egypt, we felt super conflicted about how we felt about the country because there were so many ups and downs. So starting with the highs, there's loads of culture, loads of history, you're going to learn so much. But in terms of the lows, we were hassled everywhere. So initially, when we were getting hassled, we would just say no thank you. But that did not work in our favour. Don't know whether it's because they heard our accents and thought, okay, they're from the UK, they might have a lot of money. Who knows? So when I was speaking to one of the tour guides, the best advice he gave us was, instead of saying no thank you or trying to be polite, the best thing to do is just completely ignore them. And as a couple, we could just kind of talk to each other or talk with our tour guide. So it may seem super rude, but if you don't want to get hassled, I think the best way to do it is just to ignore. Tip number 2, you are literally going to have to tip everywhere you go. At one point, we honestly felt like walking ATM machines and it was super frustrating. However, what I would say is, as a tip, is keep lots of small notes. What you'll find is, even at the airport, someone will literally grab your suitcase even when you don't want them to. And they will expect a tip to go maybe 100 meters. I tip about 10 to 20 Egyptian pounds for baggage handlers as an example. Let's talk about time of the year. So we went end of Feb to early March. We wanted a trip which was outside of the UK. It wasn't Dubai because we've been a billion times. We see history, culture. We wanted it to be hot, but we didn't want to go too far. So Egypt seemed like a good place in terms of culture, history, 5.5 hours away. But when we were looking online, it looked as if it could be a bit cold. When we got there, and especially we went to Sharm el Sheikh, Cairo and Luxor. Cairo and Luxor were so hot. Luxor, on the last day we were there, bear in mind it was early March at that point, it was almost 40 degrees. Places like Cairo and Luxor, most likely you're doing a lot of tours, you're doing a lot of walking, so the best time of the year is not to go in summer months. And even when we spoke to some of the tour providers, they said it is unbearable in July and August. So there's literally no shade by the pyramid, so make sure you don't go in the peak times of heat. In our eyes, we felt that Egypt would be a budget location. It was fairly reasonable to get to. Hotels weren't mega expensive. And what we didn't realise is when you get to Egypt, there are a lot of hidden costs that we didn't know about. So for example, when we were doing the tours in Luxor, go to the Valley of the Kings, and in your head you think it's going to be X amount and no additional charges. When we got there, we had to pay extra to see Tutankhamun's tomb, and there are all these little extra charges as well. It's something to bear in mind. So if you have a very strict budget, just be aware that there will be extra charges when it comes to tours, other entrances you might want to go into. For example, if you want to go to the pyramids and want to go into the tunnel inside the pyramids, that's also at an additional charge. So everyone needs a visa going to Egypt. Majority of people can get it on arrival. This is something we were stressing about before going. We looked at the e-visa website and it was absolutely rubbish. So just get it on arrival. It costs £25 or $25 per person. There is a reason why every hotel we stayed at in Egypt, in Sharm el Sheikh, Cairo and Luxor, gave us completely free bottled water. Basically, do not drink the tap water out there. You are guaranteed to probably get food poisoning. Food poisoning is so huge in Egypt in general, so to keep yourself safe, just don't drink tap water at all. So you make it all the way to Egypt, you make it all the way to the pyramids, and then you get told it's not worth going inside the pyramid to the tunnel. That is an additional charge, and the reason being is it's literally just a corridor, and once you're in, it's super claustrophobic. So something to bear in mind. In the end, we spoke to tour guides. I spoke to a few of my friends who have been to Egypt, and they also told me, do not waste your money and do not waste your time. So we didn't end up going in. Obviously, it's personal preference. If you feel like I've come all the way to Egypt, I need to go in, then go. However, what I would say is if you're going to places like Luxor afterwards, which we were, then you definitely don't need to go in, because you will not see any hieroglyphics in the tunnel. You will see that all in Luxor, and it is incredible in Luxor. So lots of people do the cruises around Egypt, but we decided we just wanted to go with private tour guides. You can also get group ones, but we felt that with a private tour guide, the timings would be more on our side. The one thing I would say about booking tours, especially if you're doing a group tour or a private tour, make sure you do your research beforehand, because the last thing you want is you go all the way to Egypt, you go to Cairo, you go to Luxor, you might go to Aswan, you might go to lots of different places where there's so much history and culture, and you see amazing things, but you don't actually understand the history because your tour guide is absolutely rubbish. He didn't have that, thankfully. However, I know a few people who did, who went with a tour guide and learned absolutely nothing but just saw amazing things. And one of the reasons to go to Egypt is to learn about the history. So this is my last tip, which is going to stop you from going to jail, and that is leave your drone at home. Honestly, I know so many travellers who've had their drone confiscated and they never got it back at the airport. You can also get jail time as well. I know it sounds amazing having your drone over the pyramids, but it's not worth it. And if they're so expensive, drones, I have one myself, it's over £1,000. I would never risk doing it in a country where it's prohibited. I hope these tips helped you on your trip to Egypt. I've got so many more on my Instagram. I'll drop the link below, and make sure you hit that subscribe button because I'll be sharing so much more soon.